Okay, ladies, let's see if we can get this wrapped up. This actually isn't, it shouldn't be a very long lesson. It might turn out to be a very long lesson. It shouldn't be, though. But I didn't want to get into too much more because it was going to be 3 weeks before we're back in here again. So I didn't want, this is kind of get you to a good stopping point. So that's where I wanted to take you to today. Yeah, I don't want to leave you hanging. I want to get you to a good stopping point and kind of leave you on a positive note too.
Sweet.
Well, it's bittersweet. It's positive, negative. Last week we talked about the 5 fabulous females who their father was one of the ones that died off, but because he didn't have any sons, he was just getting skipped for the inheritance when they were dividing up the land. And the 5 daughters came forward and said, that's not fair that our family just gets skipped over because they don't have any boys, you know. And God said they speak right, and if a guy doesn't have sons, it can go to his daughters. So they spoke up, they did things the right way, and they got what they asked for. And just kind of something that hit me afterwards that I didn't say, but just goes to show you what God will do if we ask.
Amen.
So many times we want God to do something, but we don't ask.
Or ask nicely.
Or ask nicely, yeah. We demand or complain, but we don't ask if we were just, you know, what God can accomplish. But this picks up, I mean, like right after that, the very next verse, right after that story, okay? In Numbers 27 and verse 12. And the Lord said unto Moses, Get thee up into this mount Abiram, and see the land which I have given unto the children of Israel. Okay, they're right there. They're right here. And when thou hast seen it, thou also shalt be gathered unto thy people, as Aaron thy brother was gathered. That's a nice way of saying you're going to die. Aaron was gathered to his people in that he died. And God says, after you see the land, you're going to die. I'll keep going and I'll go back. For ye rebelled against my commandment in the desert of Zin, in the strife of the congregation, to sanctify me at the water before their eyes, that is, the water of Meribah in Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. Okay, if you remember, way back towards the beginning when the people ran out of water, they came to a rock and Jesus said, you know, if you will strike the rock, you will have water. So Moses struck the rock and he had water. Well, later on down the road, they came to the same situation. They had no water. And God said, speak to the rock, and you'll have water. But Moses didn't speak to the rock. He struck the rock twice, even. Okay? And it tells you in some of these other passages that the reason he did it was because of the strife of the people. In other words, there was just complaining all around him. The people, we're thirsty, we're tired. Why won't God give us anything? We want to go back to Egypt, you know. And it was his frustration just got the best of him. And he's like, fine, water, you know. But this is still such a hard thing for me to understand because after all that Moses has put up with, and after all that he has done for these people, and after how many times he's intervened, and how many times he's stood up, and how many times he's been strong, and how many times he's said no to the wrong things, he messes up. Yes, it was a big mess up, but he messed up big that one time, and God says, okay, that's it, you don't get to go. All this time, 40 years wandering, but you don't get to go in. You get to see it, but you don't get to go in. I don't know which is worse, not getting to see it at all and just dying, or getting to see it and knowing you can't go. You know?
And as much as given.
Yeah, and that's the only comfort I can get, or the only explanation I can get, because we can't understand God's will. You know, we can't understand his ways. Is to whom much is given, much is required. Moses was given a great responsibility and a great authority, and he knew when he took it on that much was required, and he just didn't do it. Now, it could be that this was actually kind of a blessing in disguise, because the battles aren't over. The trials aren't over. The people's rebellion is not over. And it could be that this was a blessing and that God said, you know what? You've dealt with these people long enough. Let's just go ahead and take you home. Let somebody else take over. It could be. But here's what, you know, they're dividing up the land, and God says, okay, I just want to remind you, you're going to go up here, and I want you to go to the top of the mountain, and I want you to look out across this land. Which tells me Moses' eyesight was probably still pretty good at 120 to be able to look out and see across the land. He said, I want you to look at it, but then after that, you're going to die. But here's where I want you to look. I want you to look at Moses' response, okay?
Yeah.
How would you respond if you had put up with all this for 40 years and you had marched and you had served and you had done your very best, and yes, you messed up, but you've done your best, and then God says, okay, now you don't get to go in and I'm going to punish you and you're going to die, and how would you respond?
Probably like
Y'all are on your own. Well, he is 120.
He is 120, so he's wise and he's humble. We know he's humble and we know he's a friend of God. I, though, would be like, well, but God, I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been for those children complaining. I was so frustrated. I would have blamed. I would have excused. But please, God, I think I would have been a little more like Balaam when God told Balaam no. Well, let me ask him one more time and see if he'll change his mind, But I want you to notice Moses' response. And Moses spake unto the Lord, saying, Let the Lord, the God of the spirit of all flesh, set a man over the congregation, which may go out before them, and which may go in before them, and which may lead them out, and which may bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord be not as sheep which have no shepherd. He didn't say anything about himself. He didn't beg. He didn't blame. He didn't cry or whine or complain. It's not fair, None of that. He said, I just ask that you set up somebody that's going to lead these people because they need a shepherd. They need a shepherd. So, Lord, if you'll just grant me this one last request.
He's
Still taking care of the people.
He's still taking care of the people. If we had one last request, would it be for somebody else or would it be for ourselves? I'd love to say that I'm super spiritual and I would just definitely pray for somebody else. But if I had one last request, it would probably be for me. That it wasn't my last request because I could be here longer, live longer,
Maybe if I was 120.
Yeah, maybe at 120, it's like, you know what? I've been alive long enough. Let's just, But
Your own children.
or your own
Yes,
children,
yes,
yes.
your own
We
children.
love them like his own.
And yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true.
And
Maybe
he
I'd
fought
just
for
be
them.
like, I fought, I failed, now I rest.
Well, he's fought so long for these people, and he knows their needs.
He knows what they need.
Yeah,
And that's what he's seeing to.
there's where, well, and we stop and think, if it's our last request, our children is who we would want to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And he's like, you can't lead these people to their own devices.
Mm-mm. They've got to have a
A
shepherd.
shepherd.
Because they're like sheep. Sheep, we've talked about it. Sheep are stupid. They just are. They are not bright, and they are notorious for getting in trouble. Oh, what's that? Whoa, they fall down, they fall over. They will walk off a cliff because they're chasing a butterfly. They will. They have. They need a shepherd. That's why the Bible makes such a big deal about shepherds, and the Lord is our shepherd. And Moses said, you know what? That's fine, God. You do what you want with me, but please make sure there's somebody. And he's like, not just anybody. I mean, he says, a man, to set a man over the congregation, but he's not talking about just any man. He's talking about somebody who's going to be that shepherd. Because when he left the people in Aaron's care, things didn't go so well. What if he had left them in Korah's care?
Oh, goodness.
That wouldn't have been good. Even Aaron's sons, they got drunk and, calling magic and, okay. Moses says, surely there's somebody. Surely there's somebody within here that would be able to take my place and lead these people. And I don't think, like I said, Moses was humble. I don't think he was saying, I'm all that and there's nobody that can take my shoes, fill my shoes, but, get the closest thing you can find. I don't think that's what he was saying. I think he was saying, Lord, you know what these people need. They need a firm hand. They need a strong leader. They need somebody who is not easily swayed, and they need somebody who is strong in the faith. They need somebody who's going to lead them like a shepherd. And when I read that phrase, first of all, I was just in awe. of his response. I mean, he just,
Yeah. He's
it's like,
Moses.
yeah, he's Moses. I mean, Moses is still a man. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we don't worship Moses. He
No.
is still a man, and he messed up. That's why this is taking place, because he messed up. But so many times he puts others' needs before his own. And that's just, to me, that is completely lost in this day and age. I mean, it's a me first. What I want's better. What I have or need is more important than what you have or want or need. Or, you know, and it's like, really? This is just lost anymore.
Oh, yeah. And that example needs
That
to be
example.
exposed more often.
It does. And this, to me, right here, this where he's talking about that the congregation be not as a sheep that have no shepherd. This is such a beautiful picture of Christ. Because in Mark 6:34, this is the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus, when he came out, saw much people and was moved with compassion toward them because they were as sheep, not having a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. This wasn't written when
Right.
Moses said it.
Right.
Now, yes, it's inspired by God, and God knew what was going to be said, but the point is, Moses said, yeah, you know, they're sheep without shepherd, and God was saying, yeah, Jesus is going to know about that too, the sheep without a shepherd. He's a picture of Christ right there,
Yeah.
having compassion, and how in the world he could have compassion on those people after all they've put him through. I cannot fathom, but compassion is not convenient,
That's good.
and it's not easy. Compassion is, well, I'll give you my dog as an example. We were trying to find somebody to take care of my dog while we're gone, and I will be the first to tell you he's a handful because he has issues. He has anxiety issues and trust issues, and he doesn't just take to anybody. And because of that, people, before they even find anything out about him, all I have to say is he has anxiety and trust issues, and they go, no, we can't take him. They don't want to meet him. They don't want to talk to him. They don't want to talk to us. And it hurts. That's
Yeah.
my child.
Yeah.
That's my puppy child. And nobody wants to have compassion on him. And he has taught me so much about compassion, because I'll be honest, when we first got him, I had compassion on him, and then he started doing his little temperamental thing. He's like an angry teenager is what he's like. When he doesn't get his way, he gets all fussy and huffy, and he's like an angry teenager. But there were those first couple weeks where I was like, I'm going to take this dog back. He drives me crazy. But then he would look at me with those little eyes that say, nobody loves me, and nobody cares enough about me to work through this, to work through my issues. That's what Moses is saying. He said, these people, they can drive you crazy. They can get on my nerves, but I care enough about them to help them work through their issues. And Jesus was saying the same thing, because he knows those people of that 5,000 plus women and children that came that day, how many of them were standing at the cross going, crucify him, crucify him. And he knew, he knew each one.
Which ones were going
You're going to even testify against me. He knew, and yet he still had compassion on him. He still had compassion. What an example. And not only do we have Moses' example, and then Jesus' example, which was Moses, well, it's basically what he was being a type of, but I want you to look at what God tells him. And the Lord, back in Numbers 27, and the Lord said unto Moses, take thee Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay thine hand on him. We've seen Joshua several times through here, but each time we see him in the background. And we see him doing the right thing in the background. He was one of the 10 spies, one of the 2 that came back and said, we've got this because God's on our side. We can do this. But they didn't, we don't care what you say. He was one that was praying in the tabernacle when the plagues and things hit. He was one that went with Moses up to the mountain when Moses went up there, and he was gone the 40 days and whatever to pray and get the 10 commandments and all that. Joshua was up there, and he went halfway, and then Moses said, you have to stay here. I go the rest of the way. He was there and stayed there that whole time, waiting for Moses, watching for Moses, caring for Moses. You know? We always see him in the background, but we always see him being a help and an aid and an encouragement. You want somebody to be in charge? You want somebody that can take care? You find the humble person, not the one who's standing up going, I got this. I could take care of these people with my eyes because I could do a much better job than Moses could. If you just gave me the reins. That is not the person you want in charge. I don't care how confident they are. And that's, people confuse confidence with ability. Mm-hmm. You know, well, he's confident and so he's strong. No, confidence is not necessarily strength when it's confidence in yourself.
Right.
Now, confidence in God, that's a strength.
Yeah.
But somebody who's going, oh, I can do it, you put me, they're not confident in God. They're confident in themselves. That is not the person you want. You want that humble person that's working in the background, who doesn't need recognition, who doesn't need praise, who doesn't need to be, you know, recognized in whatever way and applauded for everything they do. They just do it because it's what needs to be done, and they do it because they want to help, and they want to be an asset, and they want to serve God. That's the person you say, that's the one who needs to be in charge. It's like, well, but they're in the background. They're not comfortable being a leader. How would you know?
True.
They're not going to usurp authority, but a lot of times they have leadership skills. You just haven't seen them because they're holding back, because they're saying, I'm not the leader. That's not my place. When it's my place, I'll step up. But right now, it's not my place. That's Joshua. And it says, in whom the Spirit is, or in whom is the Spirit. Remember, in the Old Testament, it wasn't the indwelling of the Spirit like we have today, because Jesus hadn't died. It was more of a matter of God would place his Spirit on them, and he could actually take it away, like he did with Saul. He put it on, and then Saul continued to rebel, so he was, fine, I'll take it off. Okay? He had that Spirit. We know Caleb, the other spy, we read a verse where he said he had another spirit within him. Same thing. He had that Spirit. So Lord said, okay, you take Joshua and you tell him to come over here and we're going to lay hands on him. That was kind of that. Mm-hmm. And it goes on to say, and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation and give him a charge in their sight.
Amen.
Moses is learning. God, of course, doesn't learn. He already knows. But he's like, this is the way these people are. That if you just say I'm in charge, they don't go for it. They have to see it take place. They have to see the whole ceremony. There has to be a pomp and circumstance for them to accept it. So we're going to do this in front of everybody. You're going to lay the charge. The priest is going to be there. The people are going to be there. Everybody is going to see you pass the leadership on to Joshua. So they're down the road. There's no more chorus going, well, who said you're in charge? Huh. God did. And Moses did, and Eleazar did. It's all right here. Okay?
Recorded.
It's recorded, yeah. And it's right here. And thou shalt put some of thine honor upon him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. That, I was like, I don't get that verse, so I had to look it up and study that one out. It's basically talking about authority at this point, because even though God is predicting Moses' death, Moses doesn't die right now.
Right.
He's just, basically, he is bringing Joshua in for training. Mm-hmm. Okay, think of it like a training process, I guess. And he's bringing him in, but he says, go ahead and give him some of that authority.
Oh, okay.
We need people to already be answering to Joshua. We need people to already know they can come to Joshua. Because if they're overlooking Joshua and just coming to Moses, he's not having the chance to establish any authority and any leadership. And then Moses is going to be gone, and it's like, okay, Joshua, now it's all you. That's not fair, and that's too hard. So he says, go ahead and start working him in and giving him authority. And once again, I know Joshua, just from what we've seen of him, he was like, I'll do what you tell me to do, otherwise I'm just staying back out of the way. Okay? And he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall ask counsel for him after the judgment of Urim before the Lord. At his word shall they go out, and at his word they shall come in, both he and all the congregation, all the children of Israel, with him, even all the congregation. The Urim, if you remember, it was the Urim and the Thummim. Those were the stones that were in the breastplate, and, well, people assume they're stones. They could be stones, they could be sticks, but somehow there was a way that God spoke through those stones and answered like yes or no questions, So he consulted. So in front of all these people, again, they're saying, okay, God, here's the stones, the Urim and the Thummim, is Joshua supposed to be the leader? And ding, 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 yes. Nobody could doubt that. Nobody else can make these stones or sticks do that, There's no way to do that. It had to be God. So they did it right there in front of all the children of Israel, all the congregation. It's like, let's leave no room for doubt.
Question.
Yeah, no room for doubt. And Moses did as the Lord commanded him. Again, no argument, no question, no, are you sure Joshua's the right person? Because he's never really been a leader before, or he's more of a soldier. Moses did as the Lord commanded him, just like that. He took Joshua, set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and he laid his hands upon him and gave him a charge as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses. Moses said, is that what you want? That's what I'll do. When was the last time we told God that? If that's what you want, that's what I'll do.
Wow. Yeah.
Or do we say, Lord, if that's what you want, that's what I'll do. But, or as long as, we're fickle, actually, is what we are. We say, we want God's will, and we do, or we think we do, but then when we see that God's will is not what we wanted, what we really wanted, then we're like, well, that's not what I meant, I meant I wanted it this way, or I wanted it that way, or I wanted it if it wasn't inconvenient, I wanted it if it wasn't expensive, I wanted it if it worked out the way that I had planned. But see, Lord, that doesn't fit in my nice little plans that I had laid out. See, I have this nice little schedule, and that doesn't work for me. I'll have to check my schedule and get back with you. Moses said, no. Whatever, God. You want me to go up to the mountain? I'll go up to the mountain. You want me to die? I'll die. You want me, yeah. You want me to anoint Joshua? I'll anoint Joshua. I will do whatever you want, because you're God. My challenge this week, and like I said, it's bittersweet because Moses is going to die. But it's such an awesome example for us, and I cannot think of a better challenge to leave you with for the next 3 weeks. Just, one, be compassionate towards others. We don't know what people are going through. Somebody snaps at us and we're like, well, how rude, Well, that person could have just gotten some really bad news. Maybe their dog kept them up all night and they didn't get enough sleep, Maybe they're just having a bad, don't we all have bad days? Don't we just sometimes have a bad mood? Well, why don't we want other people to understand that about us, and we want people to give us the benefit of the doubt, but why don't we do that to others? Why do we jump to, well, they're just so rude? Have compassion. Have compassion on other people. Put others before yourself. It's like, well, that's not convenient. I have stuff to do, but somehow God always works it out. If we will put others first, bless you. If we will put others first, whether that be giving of our finances, giving of our time, just stopping and praying for that person, or stopping to send them a card, or if we will do that, God always makes sure we get everything done, we have enough to meet our needs, because we're following His command. He says, you take care of those other sheep, like He told Peter, feed my sheep. You take care of my sheep, and I'll take care of you. I will. So be like Moses in that respect. First, have compassion. First, think of others before we take care of ourselves. Me. It's all about me. And then thirdly, be like Joshua. Humble enough to stay in the background, but willing enough to step out of that comfort zone when God says, okay, now I need you to do this. And I feel like this trip for me is, because let me tell you, this is not my comfort zone. This is not my comfort zone. Being around a whole bunch of people I do not know is not my comfort zone. Being separated from my hubby for 5 of those days is not my comfort zone. You know, staying by myself, Speaking in front of people is okay, but again, one thing you have to keep in mind is some of the words we use that are very, very simple, very basic, very nice words. They're not nice words over there, and I keep thinking, Lord, please don't let me say something that's actually a bad word over there. So I'm like, please, this is not my comfort zone, y'all. It is not. And I was that close to saying no again. I said no last year because they asked me last year, and I told them no. I told them no quickly, and I didn't even ask God. I just told them no. There's no way I could do that. It's not my comfort zone. It's too expensive. There's just no. And this year I was just about to say no, and God said, are you going to even ask me? Do I need to? And guess what he said? Tell him you're come. And then, not like Moses, and Moses did as the Lord commanded him. Dana said, but Lord, how am I going to get the money? But Lord, I'm not comfortable with that. But Lord, I don't want to fly that long. But Lord. And he won. But how much sweeter would it have been if I had been like Moses and in the first place just said, yes, Lord, I trust that you'll work everything out. I know that you'll make everything work. I know you'll give me peace. And I'm, okay, yes, Lord. But I didn't. Be like Joshua and Moses, obviously. Do what Moses, well, I guess actually both of them did the same thing. God said, I want you to do this, and they said, yes, sir, and they did it. So be open to whatever God has for you. If it's in your comfort zone, that's great. If it's out of your comfort zone, that's great too. Because God's given you the opportunity to grow and experience more for Him. And I'll have all kinds of new experiences by the time I get back.
Oh, yes.
So how awesome will that be?
There'll be
But it
drama
wouldn't
all the
happen.
time.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen though if you didn't step. You can't
Step out of the
experience
box.
you can't experience new things if you stay in your own familiar box. So be like Moses, be like Joshua, be open to God, and look out for other people. Watch out for other people. Be considerate. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own problems and our own discouragement, and we forget sometimes the best way to encourage ourselves is to actually encourage somebody else. Because you hear yourself saying what you know to be true, but you just haven't let it sink in yet, and you hear yourself saying it, and it's like, why am I not listening to what I'm saying right now to this person? It's obvious I know, but why am I not doing it? Sometimes that's the best way. The best way is just to reach out to somebody else.